The breaking news of the night is this letter from Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin to Richard Neal, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Steven Mnuchin saying that the Treasury and the IRS will not, as required by law, turn over Donald Trump's tax returns to the chairman. And the Treasury Secretary says, I have determined that the committee's request lacks a legitimate legislative purpose. Two things. He has no legal right to determine that. And the other is the committee does not need a legislative purpose. The law specifies that the chairman can have these returns for any reason. There is absolutely no limiting reason on the chairman getting these returns. And so Secretary of the Treasury rejected the House Democrats' demand, Chairman Neal's demand, for 6 years of the president's personal tax returns and business tax returns, and failed to comply with the deadline, or complied with the deadline tonight by just sending this letter defying the law. And now we have what is going to be a battle between the White House and Congress that we've never seen before, a legal battle. In the letter, the Treasury Secretary said, in reliance on the advice of the Department of Justice, I have determined that the committee's request lacks a legitimate legislative purpose, and the department is therefore not authorized to disclose the requested returns and return information. Every single word of the secretary's letter is not true and is legally false. Every word of it. Secretary Mnuchin refused, could not explain his rationale for not complying, couldn't explain it because he said the Justice Department is working on a legal reason. And the Justice Department, Attorney General William Barr, will publish a legal opinion, as if that legal opinion has any legal weight. Chairman Richard Neal issued a statement saying that he will consider what action to take, what legal action to take, but this is a legally unprecedented territory that we have entered tonight. The chairman said, I will consult with counsel and determine the appropriate response. That response is something that no chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee has ever had to come up with in a situation like this. Every single time the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee or the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee has demanded to see tax returns under that law, those tax returns have been immediately delivered by the IRS. That is the way the law is supposed to work. We are joined now by freshman Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter from California. She's a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congresswoman Katie Porter, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I want to get your reaction to this. This is a very simple law, as you know, and you're a law professor. You know how to read these things. There's not much in the tax code that is simple, but this is. And it simply says that the secretary shall hand over those tax returns.
Yeah, and the use of the word shall is really important. So this is not a discretionary option. There's not a list of exceptions. There's not a bunch of defenses here. This is a very simple law. It was passed back in 1924. It's not new. It's been a long part of our country's history. And it simply obligates the Treasury Secretary to turn over the taxpayers' tax returns, in this case, President Trump's tax returns. And, you know, Mr. Neal has asked for 6 years of business and personal returns in order to allow Congress to do its job, which is oversight.
And it seems legally, what do you see here as legally the next potential step?
I think this is going to result in litigation. I think there are two choices that Chairman Neal and Congress could use. Both of those are going to be protracted and are going to just delay from the important other work that Congress should be doing. So one option is to subpoena the tax returns. The other option is to sue under the statute itself in federal court. Either way, this is going to be having the House's lawyers, the House's counsel office is going to have to bring these lawsuits. And meanwhile, the president is throwing plenty of other work at the House counsel's office, suing, for example, to overturn the Affordable Care Act. So this is just another stall tactic. This president doesn't want to provide anything. He doesn't want to provide the underlying documents that Mr. Mueller used. He doesn't want to provide the tax returns. He doesn't want to provide this and that. This is one constitutional crisis after another, all of which is avoidable if the president will simply understand that in the United States of America, nobody is above the law.
And we are about 18 months away from these tax returns being handed over if there is a new president after the next inauguration day, because there would be a new IRS commissioner, new Treasury Secretary, who would not defy this law.
Correct. I mean, these tax returns are very likely to become public at some point if Congress continues to pursue them. And I think my view for President Trump is, if there's nothing to see here, then allow the American people to see them. So you either did something wrong, you did something you're embarrassed of, maybe you're not as rich as you told everybody that you were. This is a valid congressional purpose, and the law itself doesn't even require a purpose. So here we see Chairman Neal going out of his way to set forth a purpose. It's to do oversight, and the president is continuing to obstruct that purpose. And so it's extremely unproductive what the president's doing. And what I fear is that it's ultimately causing to continue to weaken the American public's confidence in the president and in Congress. And so this kind of bickering back and forth, just turn over your tax returns. It's what the rest of us have to do to the IRS. And we're not in public life like President Trump is.
And to the extent that you could divine a purpose to this law, since it was passed in the wake of the Teapot Dome scandal, it was actually a law passed specifically in response to corruption, perceived corruption at the presidential and administration level. And so the committee, actually, the chairman of the committee, wanting to see anyone in the administration's tax returns for possible corrupt purposes, investigations of corruption, is exactly what it was designed to do.
Correct. This is the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law is to allow Congress to make sure there isn't corruption going on. As you mentioned, it was passed in the 1920s in the wake of several scandals, including Teapot Dome. At the time, there was a law that allowed the president to obtain anyone's tax returns for any reason upon the president's request. And this law was designed to empower Congress to have that co-equal power. So this is really a balance of powers between Congress and the president. And now, as a result of this Secretary Mnuchin's flat-out refusal to follow a clear law, we're going to now see this go to the courts.
And one of the reasons this has never come up before is that presidents publicly release their tax returns. That has become the modern tradition. Congresswoman Katie Porter, thank you once again for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming back.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.